Okay, Jesus, if you're back, you can continue with the IMG session.
I'm back, and yeah, we have two more presentations. Both come from Emin Serman from Mid-Sweden University. Are you there, Emin?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so please go ahead.
Yes. Let me share my screen. All right, I hope you can see my screen now.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
So, I'm going to talk about building basics, which is our database on quality assessment of static point clouds. So this, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about how we created this database and essentially try to give insight into the process behind how we build these kind of databases, these kind of quality databases. And also this is tied to the discussion point that I posted online as well, that I would like to bring up on my last slide too. And this presentation is going to be based on our paper, which was published on IEEE Transaction on Multimedia, as I mentioned. And the first author, Ali Ak, is also with us in this evening or today, depending on your time zone, I suppose. And then we can take the questions later on together if need be. So how did we start building this database? I have been checking all the kind of different correspondence leading up to this point, and it took more than 2 years from start to publishing for this particular paper. And then in the starting point, we were trying to identify the needs, and then we had a need for a large data set for learning-based quality assessment metric development. At the time, the most relevant ones were either vSense volumetric video database or JPEG Plano database. And then the second need was also a large data set for benchmarking. And these are somewhat competing needs. They can be seen as somewhat competing needs, because if you need a database for benchmarking, then you need perhaps ground truth subjective quality that is collected from the users, the participants. Or if you're looking for a learning-based algorithm, then perhaps you want much more data, perhaps vaguely labeled, which was a discussion point. And then we were also trying to see what is state of the art at that time, and then what databases were available. And then when checking also the number of reference SRCs or number of process point clouds, etc., that we can say that, okay, the numbers are not as high as we expected them to be. So that perhaps some of them are higher on the process point cloud end, but then maybe the source point clouds numbers are not that high. So this was the starting point, and then basic motivation. So that once we started building the database, we started with a big funnel and then tried to reduce the breadth of the different tasks and aims. And we identified that it would be interesting to have content for telepresence and telecommunications applications, so that we focus on mostly real-time and real-world applications. And then, sorry, not real-time, that would have been wrong. Real-world applications. Of course, it would have been really nice to have real-time applications as well, but that's not perhaps still possible. And then, anyway, we wanted to collect interesting models, and then our requirements that they need to be available to us or publicly available, or so they can be made publicly available afterwards, so that we can redistribute it in a data set format. So Well, at that time, I was working in Trinity College Dublin with Resense Research Group, and we had our own data collection method so that we could provide some data. And then the French partners were also coming up with a collaboration with XD Productions, which is a company in France. And then they could also provide some data. But then we actually wanted to have more data, so that how could we fill this later part? Then just briefly mentioning what data we had was essentially a volumetric video data that is dynamic point clouds in temporal domain. And then we had mainly people either sitting, talking, or playing with ball, dancing, etc. And in XD Productions data sets that we received, we had more interesting content. We had either single person, two people, or a scene with three people in it as well. This allowed us to basically get this interesting idea that we don't have only one human now in the scene, but then there are two humans or maybe three humans that's basically interacting with each other. And then the vantage point, the viewpoint to the scene then becomes interesting, because then you can look around and then see what's the other person is doing, how is their face, how are they interacting with the others, etc. Then these focusing on people, but say, okay, let's thinking about that. We are going to be focusing on telepresence and telecommunications applications. Let's see what else is interesting and what else is out there. And while we're trying to find databases and or repositories that we can take some models, this part basically can be made publicly available afterwards was the biggest bottleneck, so that we were essentially limited in our choices. And then we found Sketchfab. Essentially, it's a 3D model library or repository that you can say. We could take 3D models there with CC Creative Commons attribution or Creative Commons public domain licenses, CC0 licenses, and then do something, some kind of processing, and then obtain some kind of point cloud. So this was our general idea of generating more content for this data set idea. And then once we were looking at the Sketchfab, we were essentially trying to identify what could be interesting content in terms of architecture, in terms of color, in terms of different type of features. And then we were trying to find out, okay, is this a CC attribution or CC attribution non-commercial, etc. license? And does this particular model have the ability to be downloaded, essentially? And once you press download, then you have essentially different options. You can get OBJ files, GLTF, GLB, or FBX, depending on the creator, however they made this data available. But then this creates essentially a plethora of different file formats that we need to deal with. And then converting them to point clouds and then further working on them, processing them would be a challenge. So the idea was that, okay, let's use only one format, because this will also make everything easy and streamlined, make it straightforward in terms of coding, so that we could script and create all the point clouds, etc., with minimal human interaction, and then in a more kind of standardized way, so that we try to converge everything on OBJ point cloud. Then we needed to do some cleaning in some cases. And what do I mean by cleaning? And this particular scene, of course, it's perhaps cannot be considered cleaning, but then those models were in different orientations. And then we needed to find a set and orientation in order to make our jobs easier in the rendering stage. so that we need to set a vantage point from where we are looking, and then all the models need to be looking in the same direction or same orientation. So the first thing was to basically take the mean point of the model and then essentially rotate them. Then the second point was that if there is a cleaning needed, that is, if the model itself, the area of interest or object of interest is crowded for some reason with trees or some other objects, then it would be perhaps not so easy to show this to people, especially in a passive subjective quality collection setting. So that the idea was to that, okay, let's keep this object of interest, but then try to clean what's around. And then at this stage, we are still trying to create our reference model, right? So this is part of this creation of reference model pipeline. Then there was also other challenges. Some objects had metallicness or different roughness settings, and then this had a very strange interaction with the light that we could not replicate in our renderer and the point clouds. So that was something that we needed to take into account, so that we needed to strip down all the metallicness so that the point cloud splats essentially needed to emit the light in a kind of blank, more or less, yes, matte property, let's say. Some other models had more than one part, more than one mesh. Then we needed to create a singular mesh with singular texture map, which would also which would be required for the next step of sampling. Yes. I hope you can still see that. My computer was a little bit jerky because there are many, many, many images here. This is the initial collection of, maybe I missed a slide, in fact. Let's see. Oh, yeah, no. Okay. So, all right, yes. This is the collection of initial 91 models that we have collected. And this includes different types of models, including these human objects, as well as some animals, some cars, houses, and sculptures, and some aerial views, as well as daily objects like shoes, a pizza, violin, etc. And then we collected these, and then we further went down and tried to reduce this number because of a few reasons. And we decided that we are not using these objects, these models. And the reasons for that is that some of them have their metallicness that cannot be reproduced properly, and that would create odd contents, odd models. One of them was indoors. We collected this one because at the time we were exploring and essentially diverging. We did not know if we were going to include indoor scenes, but then this was not of interest at that point. Some of them were not interesting or relevant, that these were not relevant to the telepresence applications or not really interesting to look at. Some had duplicates and similars existed, and some essentially were good, but we excluded them for practical concerns, mainly limitations of time for the subjective quality assessment part. Essentially, we selected 75 point clouds. This visual does not show all of them, but at least it shows the categories. So our first semantic category was humans and animals. So we collected humans and animals objects there. The second was inanimate objects. We then had daily objects and sculptures in there as well. And then the third one was building and landscape. So here we had buildings and aerial shots on this category. Then after we have essentially converted everything to OBJ and cleaned them, we then sampled points on this mesh, 3D mesh, with their location and also color information, which then we got in PLY model or PLY format. This PLY point cloud was then voxelized and then compressed using 4 different compression methods that we have selected. At the last stage, we rendered this reference, then this became the reference PLY point cloud, and we also had a compressed point cloud. So we rendered the point clouds using an OpenGL-based render with a Python interface. Then we essentially created videos for a passive data collection, passive subjective quality assessment collection point. Here are essentially various quality levels, so that this is, I'm not really sure how good it is seen on your screen, but these are low quality, these are high quality point clouds that are created. Then we have created these videos using a double helix method, and from the publications that came out that year, we noticed that the front was more interesting to the people, so we spent a little bit more time in the front area, such as faces, and that we use a DSIS methodology, show that there are reference and distorted objects side by side, and try to find a degradation of the 3D object. Then we also reported these results in our paper as well, of course. I know that my time is running short, so that I'm kind of rushing a little bit. One thing to perhaps mention that this database was used in the ICIP 23 Grand Challenge on point cloud visual quality assessment. And then we also came up with a track-based evaluation method, which is also published. I took ICIP this year, ICIP 2024, with also the toolkit was also published on GitHub as well. And while Shell was talking, I also took note that maybe we should also push this to the list of the toolkits, and so that more people can use it, perhaps. So here is a QR code for the database, which is also in the paper when if people want to use this database. And I'm not really sure, I'm not really familiar how to go on with this format, but then I can also mention my discussion point, how can we ensure a good distribution of the source contents in the database creation? So that's the end of it.
Thank you, Emil. Any questions for Emil? Or Ali? There are no questions. From my experience on this, also we are working a bit less than in point clouds in meshes. So for the subjective experiments, how did you render these point clouds? I mean, they were like in each point you render some kind of cube or whatever.
I need to go and double check.
Okay.
Ali also can help me with this.
So I mean, regarding the generation of the data sets, we worked for other contents like light field or 3D or whatever on a kind of trying to characterize different properties of the objects that you can be interested in. No? There are some papers out there, and maybe this can help to identify the properties that you can get from the set of objects and identify which can be more important for subjective assessment, both from the semantic point of view and also from the physical point of view. And I can point you to some paper. We did it for 3D and for light field and for, I don't know. And maybe that can help on identifying which source contents can be more useful, to have like a wide variety of different source contents covering different properties or dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of a few of in VQA, most people use SI, TI, colorfulness, some form of different characterization methods, and on light field, and also semantic categories and perhaps depth disparity get into context. But in 3D, especially for point clouds or volumetric video, that is not so clear that people don't use so different things. So that's why I wanted to.
Maybe we can think about it. We also, in terms of content that you can like freely explore, that is the case also on point clouds. We work with 360-degree videos, and for example, we try to characterize that the amount of information that is in different parts of the image, so you can kind of estimate where are the main focus of attention or the main information of the image, right? Like using entropy or even some science models. So maybe this can be helpful here. For example, if you have people, you will have mainly the information like in the front of this object, and probably not that much interesting in the back part, no? But if you go to other like statues or buildings or whatever, probably everything is more distributed than in the just so yeah, but it's a good idea to identify that. I can see hand. Shell.
Yeah, I was just thinking about if this would possibly fit into the new directions that Saman and Abhijit was thinking about for the CGI. So maybe that could be something you could coordinate with them. I mean, when did we have that session? That would be late Wednesday afternoon. They would discuss the future of CGI, and maybe some of your work will fit in there. And also, of course, it would be great to be sharing the database on the VQEG homepage. But so now I think have been Glenn van Wallendale that has been the most active person taking care of the tools and setup group. So maybe that's the best person to reach out to. He's not here at the meeting at the moment, but
yeah. Okay.
Thank you. It was a very nice presentation.
Thank you. I mean, maybe we can move to the next one. So this one related to light field, right?
Of course. Yes, this is related to light fields. So this is a representation perhaps of our COMEX paper, which was already presented in Karlshamn in Sweden this year. I think it would be interesting for the people here as well. So that's why I wanted to bring this up again. And then also perhaps to create a little bit of discussion at the end when it comes to also how to collect data for light fields, etc. So the spherical light field database for immersive telecommunications and telepresence applications. And then I generally start with a teaser and my presentation. So the advancement in planoptics and immersive imaging technologies now makes it possible for us to capture and visualize the remote scenes in 360 degrees and omnidirectional videos, images, but then these only focus on essentially 3 degrees of freedom, so that we can only move our heads, but we cannot move in location. But if we had a light field that is in spherical context, then we can re-render different views, and then we can get more than 3 degrees of freedom as well. So points of departure and motivation for this particular paper was that we need essentially more research on spherical light fields, but we don't have suitable real-life data sets, and there are many challenges. And saying this, it doesn't mean that there are no real-life data sets. There has been a work of Bent and others in 2014. Essentially, they tried to collect data using a tripod and a 360 camera, and then moving this camera on a vertical axis. But this data was not publicly available. And then another one is Mauger and others in 2019 essentially collected this spherical light field data, what we can consider spherical light field data, or one can consider also spherical multi-view data, multi-view video even, using many different spherical omnidirectional cameras. But then they did not have an accurate distance between these camera points, so that although the data is there, then it's not on a structured grid. So perhaps it is a little bit challenging to also understand and use these in different contexts, especially for view synthesis, perhaps. So this spherical light field database is now a publicly and freely available spherical light field database. And in this presentation, I'm going to briefly talk about light field capture and 2 use cases, and also briefly mention the challenges. So light field capture we've done using an Insta360 X3 omnidirectional camera, and we use also a dolly so that we could move very accurately for 1 centimeter, stop the dolly, and then take a picture, directional picture without us in sight. So that essentially created a 1-dimensional light field, that is. And then once we collected these images, we used this Insta360 desktop application, and then this application gives us both raw images and also JPEG images. Because of space constraints, we had to use the JPEG images, which is likely or perhaps perceptually lossless compression. Then further, in order to ensure that we haven't changed the quality further, we converted them to PNGs and then reduced the size to a smaller size, because the headsets that most headsets that we use do not require that big of a resolution. And then once we do that we then have 1:60 linear light field of spherical content with ERP, or equirectangular projection format. We captured 20 different scenes in Sweden University Sundsvall campus, and these scenes have we try to have different characteristics, and I will get back to this point. You might notice that all of these scenes are indoors, and this is something that I'm going to mention in the challenges part at the last slides. But nevertheless, we try to capture data from different points, and then with different characteristics, with different depth information as well. So let's see if this works perfectly. Yes. So here we have a rendering of, temporal rendering of video of the light field, and then you cannot see it probably, but there's a clock, and if you look at the clock, you'll see that this took quite a little bit of time. It's not just a dolly moving with the video. These are very accurate movements. And then we also try to characterize the collected data with spatial information, depth index, which is trying to imitate temporal index of ITU TP910, and also colorfulness as given by Hassler and Sister. And these gold rings around these points are also the points that we have selected, the light fields we selected for the case studies in the coming slides, so that we didn't have the resources, and also this was not a compression paper. For example, this was a dataset paper, so that we essentially selected a subset of these scenes and then try to process them to see how good this database is in different use cases. And first use case was spherical light field compression. And for this, we created a pseudo video sequence of the captured light fields, spherical light fields, in ERP format. And then we used two different compression algorithms. One is HEVC, because this was used previously for both omnidirectional video and light field compression. And the other one is a compression method developed at Sweden University and also in the Iran as well, so that joint endeavor. Then we create a bit stream from these compressions in different levels. In fact, we use 3 quality levels for comparison of these 2 different methods. And again, why we use 3 quality levels is not that important, because this is not an exhaustive compression study. But we were trying to show that the collected database is essentially good for its use in compression data, compression methodologies, and compression studies. So these are the selected light fields, so 0, 1, 2, 9, 16, and 17. And then we try to get meaning from these curves that we have taken. So here you see PSNR versus bits per pixel, and pixel-based width also versus bit per pixel. And you can notice that there is a difference between also PSNR and width, in which case, if you look at PSNR, one method is better. If you look at width, the other method is better. And this also shows us that we cannot rely on one or the other. So we need perhaps more subjective quality assessment for this particular comparison for spherical light field compression scenario. And then we were also trying to analyze the data that we have further using, trying to see how this compression algorithms affected the quality. So then here you see the frame index from 1 to 60. And then you can also see the quality fluctuations within these cases. And these fluctuations align pretty well with how we have selected these intra-frames and predictive frames, so that if you have the intra-frames or bidirectional intra-frames, then you have a pretty good quality score. And while you're getting away from that, your quality score reduces. Then here, while we were looking at this data, we also noticed that this variation can be also something that can be used to characterize the light field data that we have. And then we tried to plot these variations, which would also show how much this light field data is affected by compression. And this also shows that here we show this variation of different maximum and minimum scores with respect to various light fields that we selected, 6 light fields selected, which is then something that can be used to further characterize a database and to validate a database's usefulness in compression scenario. Then we also have a second use case, which is view synthesis for spherical light fields. And here we use 2 separate view synthesis methods. One is Panasynth VR, is using a multi-cylinder image and trying to generate new views using this multi-cylinder approach. And the second one is 360 view synthesis, which uses a DIVR-based approach and trying to first find out the depth image and then try to synthesize the new view based on this DIVR. And in this one, in order to create a challenge, we selected only the center view as the anchor point. That is the initial location for these view synthesis algorithms. And then we tried to estimate each of the other remaining views, starting from this anchor view in the center. Which then turned out that at the center, we have a very high quality because this is the original data. And then while we are getting away from this anchor point, the quality reduces significantly with a drop. And we can see here that 360 view synthesis is better than PanaSynth VR in this case. And these are also state-of-the-art algorithms for view synthesis that has been worked in small baselines. But now here we have a large baseline that is 30 centimeters to be exact at this point. So then we can, hopefully this will work. Yes, you can see that if you have a small baseline, here's the ground truth, here's 360 view synthesis and PanaSynth VR, that you have somewhat okay-ish results that you can perhaps rely on, because then you move just barely. But then, of course, this can be looked on different parts as well. So if you're looking on the side, then you can still see that there is a little bit of artifacts, especially for PanaSynth VR. And you can see that, especially if you zoom, that neither of them are really good. Here, we don't see that the same artifact, the same perspective change. And here, PanaSynth VR essentially dances around. And this becomes even worse, especially if we go to large baseline. Here you can see the results for large baseline. And this might be disorienting for some people. I hope it's not the case. In PanaSynth VR, it is essentially completely broken. And 360 view synthesis doesn't change at all compared to the ground truth. So we have essentially a big challenge when it comes to large baseline. And here we can see this kind of stretching behavior that comes with 360 view synthesis, which is not happening actually in real life either. So we have then open challenges. The first challenge is essentially positioning for this capture and static versus dynamic. So you can capture static scenes by positioning the camera in different locations, but then you cannot capture dynamic scenes. Here you can see an example of people moving and stairs. And the second challenge is lighting, so that if you capture with different conditions, and these are not from the database, these are pilot database or pilot data collection results that we have seen and then decided not to use it in the database, of course. And then once you have a cloud over the sky, then your white balance changes, or other things moving might change your camera's white balance as well. So that this is the second challenge, that it's not very straightforward how to address that using color correction. And there's also the third challenge, that is view synthesis, especially in large baseline. So here is a conclusion summary slide that we propose a public spherical light field database, validated this on 2 different use cases, but many challenges remain, including lighting, capture, compression, view synthesis, and others as well. You can also preview the database, and this database is also on Zenodo for those who want to use it. And then I can also tie this to my discussion point. What are the approaches one should pursue to create reliable data or more data for spherical light fields or omnidirectional view synthesis, especially addressing the challenges given in the talk? So how can we collect data to the 3D positions accurately or address the lighting challenges? So yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you. I mean, great presentation. Margaret, please.
Hi, that was fascinating. And what an interesting set of problems. I have just one insight to offer you. The lighting problem, that's going to be really hard to solve because 3 color planes is not sufficient to represent colors accurately. I asked around when I was looking into this camera problem about 7 years ago, and I couldn't find any research even saying how many color planes would you need to get accurate colors. And good luck convincing the camera manufacturers to go above 3. That said, there are color charts you could put into the scene at various places to manually calibrate, but then you'd have color charts. I don't know if it's practical, but I have one color chart and algorithm that a coworker of mine developed, I don't know, something like 20 years ago or more, that he got a lot of positive feedback. And if you're interested, I'll send you a link to that.
Yes, of course. I'll send an email.
Okay, yeah, I'll dig that up. It's been a long time since I thought about that. He intended it for things like printers, for example, to accurate colors out of printers.
Yeah, that will be interesting. But if it's going to take a lot of your time, then perhaps it's not that important.
No, it's just a matter of paging down through previous publications. I'll find it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Narciso, that is here with me, also has one question.
Okay, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Emin, for your very nice presentation on spatial light fields. And if I understood well, you were considering only horizontal movements of the camera and horizontal variations, but you didn't consider any vertical one, just moving up or down. Can you tell me about that?
Sorry, I didn't get the last bit.
I said that if I understood you in your presentation, you were obtaining horizontal light fields and you were moving around left or right. But even in the array of cameras you presented at the end, there were no vertical shift. That is a vertical. Okay.
No, we only collected the horizontally. We could have tried it, but then it would become another issue, that how do you define and how can you move this accurately? There are some ideas to use. We actually have thought of using a robotic arm, for example. But then again, the accuracy of the robotic arm. For example, we had this dolly, and then the dolly was pretty accurate whenever it comes to millimetric movement. But then whenever you're using another type of device, then how accurate will that be? It's not that clear to me, at least. So that's why we didn't use any horizontal movement at this stage.
Okay. I understand the technical problems, and I appreciate the work you did in horizontal way, but I consider that if you are able to add a vertical shift, the database will be much more enlarged and useful.
You're right. Definitely. Maybe we can just try something with the tools that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Narciso. Lucas has one question. Margaret, you have the hand raised, but I think it's kept from before,
sorry.
right?
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, just if I was skipping your question. So please, Lucas.
Yeah. Thank you, I mean, for the nice talk. I'm just wondering, maybe I'm looking at this super naively, but since from each view, I'm talking about this problem of lighting. You know, that's really fascinating. I'm wondering, we know from each view to view, you know, there is some sort of mapping. Like you know that there is the point that exists in another view. It's maybe shifted, but it's still there. Is there? Can we use this information to devise a transformation like a color transformation from one view that you would take as a reference, like let's say the first one, and then you would use most of the points that you know are in the next view to devise a transformation of the color? Would it be completely out of question, or?
No, I mean, I think that this is the most logical approach. I would have done probably a similar thing if we wanted to go that way and then try to spend more time on database collection at this stage. But then that could be also problematic, because then you need to find perhaps, I mean, not problematic, rather than not straightforward per se, because you need to then find out the location in 3D and then register that point in 3D, I suppose, in order to make a good registration and then tracking of that point. Then you could perhaps get that data. But some of these, maybe you could get the correspondence, rather, sorry. But some of these points are also looking outside, especially then you're constraining yourself to be either a suboptimal solution, which is also fine, or then this is not going to work if you have windows out towards looking outside, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah,
maybe it's not the global
definitely going to be some
optimization.
interesting corner cases. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. I have one small question, just curiosity. Some time back, I mean, I know the work of Thomas Mollier, and also there was some commercial approach from Lightro Immerse, no, that was 360, but also like providing light field. I think it was discontinued. Do you know any other approaches that are not using dollies? I mean, that you can capture dynamic content somehow in this, because the setup, for example, from Thomas Mollier is super complicated, right? If you want to record things in the room.
I'm not familiar with any other 360 light field or spherical light field data collection methods. For, as you know, also for planar collection, it's much straightforward. You can have an array of cameras, etc. But even if you have an array of cameras that are placed, that could be a solution perhaps, and having an array of cameras that's somehow minimally obstructing one another. But then that is in the baseline of Lightro, that is close to impossible, I suppose. I'm not really sure. Maybe it is possible, but I'm not a physicist then. And then in the larger scale, then you need to have also a very accurate grid that you can place your 360 cameras on top of, I suppose. That's why I wanted to bring this up as well, mainly to get ideas what other people, if the other people have been thinking about this, etc.
Cool, thank you. I mean, any other comments or questions for me? Okay, so that's all. Thank you. I mean, I think we will share your links of the data sets in the minutes, so everybody can check them out, and probably they can contact you offline later.
Yes, I'll share the presentations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, so now we move to the last. I mean, as I said before, it's not a presentation. It's just to check the status of the document that we are working on for the recommendation. Just to put some background before sharing this document. So we had, I don't think everybody knows this, but we had a meeting in September in CWI in the Netherlands, an IMG meeting, where we, joined together there to discuss a little bit on the results that we are getting in the different labs. As probably you all know, we are doing this test lab. There are 13 labs testing different tasks, some of them related to what Lucian has presented before, and also different systems. And tests, well, in some labs are still running on. In some others, they have been already finished. So in September, it was a good moment to meet together and discuss on the status of the different tests and also on the next steps, especially towards this recommendation. And we made some decisions and we started working in this recommendation that I'm going to, what I'm doing now. Stop sharing. That I'm going to share so we can go. Okay. Can you see the document?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So the plan is to go through this document and check. We have been working on it, since September from this meeting, and to check, to receive some feedback also from people that are not involved. Maybe we can get some good comments. Just for the ones that are working on this document, there was one problem with one of the documents that Pablo shared, so I created another one. But people, we have continued working on both, so I have joined everything together in this one. That is the one that is in UPM's SharePoint. So please do not use the one that is still in Nokia SharePoint. I will remove it from there. I was just keeping it just in case I missed something. So if somebody's now identifies that something that he or she was writing in the other document now is missing, please let me know and I will try to integrate. I think everything is here. So I think I have Marta and Pablo also there. Maybe, I don't know if you want to go, or to provide an overview on the document before going section to section.
No, it's okay to go through it and review.
Okay, so you will see later, but what we, as also we discussed before in the discussion with Lucian, we, after discussing all the results of the different tests, we identified what can we recommend and what can we not recommend, or maybe only provide some guidelines, right? So we try to structure the document taking into account this, right? And for example, in the case of the tasks are going to an appendix and not to the formal recommendation. So, the main objective of this recommendation is to provide methods for subjective assessment of extended reality communication systems. We want to have a very simple recommendation, so simple and useful, right? So you can really get some guidelines if you want to prepare a test plan, probably following the guidelines or the model of the recommendation P910. So I will go section to section, more or less, check the status. Please jump in, especially those, I will call you, those that have been working on each of the sections, so you can comment on the main additions. So the recommendation starts, yeah, Margaret, please.
Excuse me, could you zoom in a little bit?
Sure.
See my monitor, but anybody watching this afterwards, and probably some people, it's going to be hard to see. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm trying to see if I'm able to see the people that is in the meeting and at the same time the document, but doesn't seem the case. So in these first sections are a summary, some keywords, introduction, so and the scope are parts typical parts of the recommendation. We assigned almost all of them to Gunilla. I don't know if Gunilla is there, so she can tell us. I think she was before,
Yes,
but I don't know. Yeah,
I am here. Yes. So I have started to write something, but I will read it through when it's more finished and see that it is in line with the document itself. So it's very short right now, but it will be more later on.
yeah. So I forgot to mention, like the plan, at least the schedule is to have today have a first checkpoint on the status of the document. Then probably we will have until December to work in another second version. And if I'm not wrong, we have to submit it by January. So this is more or less the plan. So I mean, this is still a draft, and it will be. We have to still work on it, just to give some context on it. Yeah, so we are putting more or less in the introduction, we are describing the EIXC work items. So we want to propose methodologies to describe the design, these communication-based interactive tasks, and also the relevant measures that we want to ask or to gather from the subjective experiments. This is more formal definitions that will be completed at the end. As I said in this point 6, how to use this recommendation, we want to have a practical recommendation following some examples of P910. So we want to have like clear methods, especially based on what we have already tested, and good justifications on how and why to use the different options. And we will add some more information in the appendix for those things that we are not really sure about recommending. This is on our side, on my side, Pablo's and Marta's. We will probably address this in the following steps. So then we have a section about the guidance on appropriate test designs. This is also coming from the original design of the test plan. I don't know, Pablo, if you want to talk about it.
Yes. So we have been showing this figure for a while, but the thing is that the first point in the recommendation is basically how to build your own test, and this section 7 with its subsections will have pointers to the rest of the recommendation, so that you start reading here and then you go to the places with the details. We are so the aim of the recommendation is addressing what was defined in the previous recommendation P1320, which is assess the effect of a variation of a system influencing factor on the QoE, and specifically on some QoE constituents under some conditions. So this is like the high-level view of the task. There are 2 branches of the test, which is the black box test, where you compare 2 different systems, and the systematic test, where you basically take one system and compare variations of conditions on this system. Like you can vary, like typically resolution, latency, these kind of parameters. Okay. There might be something in the middle, which is the white box test, which is more about changing individual features of the system. But we need to review the rest of the recommendation to see if this is actually a new use case or probably a variation of the systematic test. So yeah, if you go down a bit, so this summarizes basically the intention of the test. We know that these methods, so the idea of this recommendation is to use the system, or to have the system influencing factors as, or one or a few system influencing factors as independent variables, and the rest of the influencing factors, like the other system plus the human and context IFs, to be something to be controlled and balanced.
No, pero está cargado ya.
We know that it is not the only way to do this. Some of the labs that that are taking part on the experiment, on the development of the recommendation, are actually studying variations on context or human influencing factors. So kind of other ways are possible, but the recommendation will focus on assuming that the SIF is the independent variable. You can go down a bit. Yeah, so that, yeah. So basically, this is about how you can consider the different influencing factors in the tests. And this is, as I said before, mainly pointers to other sections. So human influencing factors are always, in principle, things to be controlled. And there will be basically section 8 will mostly cover how to control these influencing factors. We are taking the list of influencing factors from ITU-TP 1320, which has a very nice analysis job on that. The context, basically, there are two types of context influencing factors. One has to do with whether the test is performed in the lab or in a home or in a crowdsourcing configuration. This is also something to be somehow controlled, so it also will be in section 8. And then the other group of context factors have more to do about the use case that you are trying to validate. And this will be used to select basically the task of the experiment. And if you go a bit down, regarding the SIFs, there can be either independent variable or something to be controlled as well. P1320 identifies 3 levels of SIFs. So there are the higher level, which is human world-related factors, and then rendering aspects and system aspects like network and compression. So basically, the human world-related factors like the degrees of freedom, representation of users, and so on, this may influence the selection of the task as well. So some tasks, for instance, allow locomotions, others don't. So if you have to test locomotion, you should need use a task which accounts for that. But rendering aspects have direct influence on the audiovisual perception. So basically, if you are changing something which will basically change your rendering, you will need probably to evaluate that. And then there's a specific set of questions to evaluate that, which is the typically visual or audio quality section questions. And there will be in another section, basically of the methods. And finally, the system resource aspects like the latency and resolution. I mean, yeah, like network latency, packet losses, bandwidth, things like that. They will probably have this normally will have effect on the rendering. So you should probably also ask about the subjective quality. And it is probable that you want to monitor them. So there's a specific clause about the system monitoring and system description, which is section 9. So basically, this is the structure of the recommendation and the pointers to the different sections. So basically, section 7.2 will be the selection of the task, depending on the context and some of the system factors. Section 7.3 is the selection of the test method. So basically, the questionnaires, depending on what you want to measure. Section 8 and 9 have to do about controlling the variables that you have to control, which also map to other kind of factors. So this is the structure. So here you have like the instructions, and then you go to the other sections to complete that.
Thank you, Pablo. So then we have this section 7.2 on the guidance to select the different tasks. Marta, you want to comment on this?
Yes, very quickly, we just have presented here like a structure that we want to follow. Also, maybe we need to add something about the timing because I have noticed that we don't have that information yet. But basically, we have started presenting like the focus that we post at the beginning of designing the tasks. Audio communication, 3D objects or body communication. So that's like the main point. After that, you want to apply the task depending on the use case. If you want to have a collaboration during the communication, or you need to have some specific roles, the expert or non-expert. And yeah, and also we wanted to review the influencing factors that have been tested in the different labs and consider and post them here. And yeah, and some additional considerations that we can add here to help the reader to choose the task. And after that, we were thinking of maybe prepare a figure to choose between one task or another, or just to provide some visual help for the reader.
Thank you, Marta. So I don't know if you want to discuss it later or now. I think this is one of the sections that the presentation of Lucian can affect if we want to introduce this characterization that he has presented, or if we want to point out to other recommendations.
Yeah, I forgot that, but in the survival game, we have like recent differences with the task proposed in previous recommendations. So we also need to add here the differences that we are proposing and what we have done.
Okay. Lucian, are you there? Do you have any comments or suggestions on how to address this, taking into account also the previous recommendations?
Yes,
Maybe
I'm here. Sorry, I somehow couldn't find my microphone. So the thing that we could try to add are those statistics. As I sent already an email to you, I could try to help with this. Some of those statistics need time data, which we probably don't necessarily have. But others, they don't necessarily need those data. So we could try to figure out what we can do.
Okay. So maybe I will add your name here, right?
Yeah, it's okay. Anyway, this would need really like a meeting where we kind of look at the data that we have and think about what we can do. And I don't have access to all the IMG data.
So
I'm not sure if there is one file that contains everything or not.
In fact, we don't have access to the raw data or whatever. What we for the moment have is access to the different presentations where we can find some graphs and some things that they have already analyzed. I don't know if this is enough. If not, we have to plan. We have to plan how to share the data that is required for any other analysis.
Okay.
Because this was also discussed, at least it arose during the discussion there in CWI, is how we share the data among us, and also how we share the data with the rest of the communities. There are some things, especially since there are some of the data, not the ones that is in the questionnaires, but there are some behavioral data that can be a bit sensible. So maybe we have to follow some procedures like that are not that easy as it have been in previous test plans. So this is something that we have to still discuss, because I don't think we reach a decision there. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, but I mean, maybe we can see what we need for this, and then see if we can share more than we have already shared.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. So I think this is still the same thing. This is from our side, the guidance on the selection of the measures. In fact, I have not had a lot of time on working on this, and the plan would be to go through these different tests that we have done, and then trying to provide some guidelines on how to select the different methods depending on the task, on the things to measure, and also include a flowchart. There is this test in red is coming from a previous version of the recommendation, so we will not use it right now, but we will work on this in the future. Then we go to section 8, that is guidance on the considerations of human influence factors and context influence factors in the tests. And there are some sections on the selection of participants, sensory acuity, and control on of the internal state of individuals, and then test environment. We have here people, Femi, Felix, Pablo, and Marcus is not here. He told me that was not going to be able to attend. Any comments here? For example, Felix, I see that you already added some information, or at least the plans to address this.
Yes, so the sensory acuity section is still very much work in progress, but since the systems and tests and modalities in general considered in XR and also in scope for this recommendation are quite diverse, instead of giving a strong recommendation for specific tests, which could be very extensive, rather provide some open consideration and guidelines. Basically, depending on the sensory modality that is under investigation, use different acuity screening methods that could be considered, and also considering the selection based on other factors, for example, duration of the test and so on. And that surely needs to be linked to existing ITU documents and recommendations. So it should probably point to recommendations that have respective visual or auditory focus or any other modality. Yeah.
Thank you, Felix. Pablo?
Yeah, this is going to be a very short one. Basically, the idea here is that there are some influencing factors. So there are basically some human factors that might not be your dependent variable, but you want to measure them because they might be a confounding factor of your experiment. For instance, maybe your experiment is about the perceptual quality variations when you change the latency or whatever, but some people get a lot of simulator signals and then they will score very, very low the quality. So maybe if you think that your experiment might cause simulator signals issues, then you should measure simulator signals, not because you really want to measure it as dependent variable, but because you might want to control the simulator signals in your individuals while you're doing the experiment. So basically, this is what I'm trying to write in this paragraph, and then I will simply point to some measures or questionnaires that are there that might be helpful just as a control method, not as an output variable. Basically, that's the purpose of 8.3.
Thank you, Pablo. Yeah, and the section 8.4 was Marcus who was writing it. He told me that he was not going to be able to join. In this case, in this section 8.4, he was working on considerations about, comparing lab versus field studies and also versus crowdfunding studies. He said that it's still in a brainstorming state, but he appreciates if there is any input or any comment or hint on field or living lab studies contained in any previous ITU standards. So if any of you know about this can be helpful for us to work on this section. And then we go to section 9, that as Pablo said, here we display the different test methods and rating scales. We have divided into 9.1, that is methods on evaluating the task performance, 9.2 on conversation and behavior analysis, 9.3 on subjective perceptual quality, and 9.4 on other post-experience questions, more on the high level. Okay, and there are some other subsections we will go after this. So for 9.1, I don't know if Milena is there. I've not seen her before. She's not there, right? Okay, so here the main, I think this is also still coming from a previous version of the recommendation. So we want to find some objective measures on the task performance. So it can be on the task success rate. For example, in some cases, it can be the number of guest items per unit time, or for example, as we have seen before, the task completion time. We have seen before in the presentation of Lucian that they were naming this like effectiveness, right, or some measure from this. And also the task accuracy and error rate. So these are some proposals that are there. For the conversation and behavior analysis, I don't know if Carlos or Federica are there. They are more working on this.
Yes, I'm here. We are not working yet on writing the 9.2, but the idea is to describe, for example, what I did in the conversation analysis for the block building task in the experiment together with the CWI for the conversational analysis. For behavioral analysis, I will talk with Federica on how to analyze the movements of the users.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Lucian, please.
I was just wondering, is it a similar, well, with movements, it's definitely different, but the conversation itself is analyzed similar to 1305, got a detail link to the analysis of conversation and how the conversation can be distracted by others and what are the consequences of the distraction. So I'm wondering if this is something that we would like to link, we would like to kind of copy and change, because I understand that, of course, anything that is with movement, the 1305 is focusing entirely on audio. So like assuming there's no video, no interaction. This could be helpful.
Yes,
Sure,
thank
sure.
you.
We have to.
Yes, thank you, Lucian. Of course, I reviewed that before processing the data and so on for my experiment, but I was unable to check the interaction, so I only analyzed the activity time and I mean, the time each role participate in the conversation, and also how much it lasted each intervention on the conversation. So I will write here more on how to process the audio data to take that measurements. For the turn taking and so on, I will go for the recommendation you mentioned it.
So just a short comment from a discussion with people from here, from CU Boulder. They also did the task for IMG. And I think that this is a point that is really nice to add to the recommendation, like warning that you need to be able to analyze conversation, you need a system that is saving the audio recording on one side from both sides. So the problem is that if you record what I'm saying to within the conversation and what the other person is saying, but on our devices, those audio tracks, let's say, they are not synchronized as we are hearing it. So some of the analysis then are kind of difficult or even impossible. So this would be very nice to make people aware that if they want to record the conversation from my point of view, they have to record my audio and also what I'm hearing, which is not so easy actually, typically. Like it's really needs an extra effort. So I think that this would be really nice to put into the recommendation.
Okay, I will write it down. In my case, I record for each participant in a double channel, a stereo audio file, both the mic and the speaker of each participant. So I have diarized already the audio. So that's a good trick, I think, if you are using an immersive device.
Yeah, it's excellent trick. And what I'm saying is that since you are doing it, it could be easily said like we recommend to do it. Yeah, but here we could also explain we recommend to do it because some analyses are impossible if you don't do it. Yeah. So in my opinion, like just emphasizing it in the recommendation would be nice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lucian.
Thank you, Lucian. I don't know if I remember correctly, but I think the idea in the last meeting in the Netherlands, it was to try to address this probably from a different work item in ITU. Pablo, I'm correct?
Yes, that was basically the idea. We need to decide how to process that. We need to add something to the recommendation. The thing is that there will be pending work because all the motion analysis and things like that, we might add something kind of simple, but we haven't had a lot of time to do a very detailed analysis on that. So I think Alex made the point, and we noted that it might be useful even to propose a new work item specifically on objective performance analysis or behavior analysis, on behavioral analysis methods. And at ITU level, I don't know if it could also be interesting as a topic for VQEG, or well, yeah, this goes a bit beyond the. I mean, so for the specific scope of this ITU recommendation, yes, I think it would be useful to have a specific recommendation on behavior analysis and basically and how to analyze conversation and motion logs from XR systems. And overall, I think that we might want to add a specific task force or reorient some of the groups that we have in VQEG to think about, in general, how to improve the methods of subjective analysis for the future. Or, I mean, not analysis, but basically all the subjective experimentation might require a specific working group, but this is something a bit broader even.
Okay, so moving on then, section 9.3 is a section on the measures related to subjective perceptual quality. This is mainly audiovisual. What we have written here, especially Miguel, is what we have been using in our tests here at UPM. We will gather more information from the different tests and add it in the following days. So how you rate the overall quality of experience, the video quality, audio quality, everything in a 5-level scale, like typical ACR. And also we can think about how easy did you find to communicate. We can add here also some usability questions that we may add. We have to check how it has been used in the other tests. And then we have a section on the post-experience questionnaires that are more on high level of human factors. Camille or Marta, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I can comment, or we can share the comment. I'm not sure. Martha, what do you prefer? So what we are thinking, and we had this discussion with Martha, to beside of listing the questionnaires that are using in this particular scenario, the more important part, and maybe something that we can discuss further, is below this part, and the part where we actually can recommend something. And as for most laboratories in this project, the questionnaires were quite troublesome. We thought that we can write down those concerns. So this is in point 944. Yeah, so the main concern is that those questionnaires are pretty long, especially if you combine lots of them. Then we have like three main problems with that. So first is participant burden. So we might overuse our participants, maybe pointless sometimes, or also increase the noise by making them burdened with too much questionnaires. Also, data analysis, complexity of longer questionnaires, and the problems with, for example, that what we've seen, like over 100 t-tests. It is problematic to actually understand what happened in the experiment when you have too much questions. And third problem is balance between the length of the questionnaires and the numbers of factors evaluated depending on the time. So like when to ask those questions in the middle of the experiment or at the end of the experiment. For sure, we cannot ask like 30 questions every 2 minutes. So this is quite problematic. So what we would like to propose here, as I wrote it here, therefore the justification for using each questionnaire should be clearly provided. So why you use this certain questionnaire? It is not recommended to use questionnaire if there is no direct manipulation that generates sufficient variance in the data. So it's something that Lucian mentioned before, is like how sure we are generating this this effects in the experiment, or if this is surely our target. So I don't believe that we can like control for factors asking too much questions. It's rather to measure if we actually create some effect. And the last part of this is for exploratory studies of influential factors. We recommend using qualitative methods such as interviews, focus group, and open-ended questionnaires instead. So if you are on the more explorative phase of your study, it might be better to actually use those methods instead of throwing like too much questions. Second point, we had this the projects where we have different technologies. So for example, we use traditional, in case of Nokia, we use traditional two-dimensional communication comparing to VRs, and then some items from some questionnaires might not be suitable for two-dimensional task, for example. So in that case, they are not sound accurate or adequate for this use case. So what we would like to recommend is to double check it, and we can also review those questionnaires to make a list like which of those will be applicable, for example, for two-dimensional technology. And third part, what we discuss with Martha is also that there's not much like straight guidelines of how to translate to native language the questionnaires. So we listed here from social science like two methods that could be used to make more sure that your translation of the questionnaires is more accurate. So first is back translation. So basically you have two translators where you first translate to the native language and then from the native language back to English and see how the difference are. And you basically re-roll this process until you have the questionnaire, which is comparable. And then community approach, where you have more people and each of them translating the questionnaire separately, and then you discuss on it. And here we would like to advise to have someone who can tell things about cultural differences also. And last part about that would be to, if you have some new questionnaires, we recommend to do the pretest on the questionnaire like before the main test, yeah. So like measure also the questionnaires itself in this first test. So this is all our concerns, and yeah. If you have any comments, I think it's a good time for that.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, we have point 9.5 system performance. Marcus is not here. I don't know if Karen, are you there? No. So this section is how to describe the systems and experimental conditions. They have been working on some texts. Marcus told me that they have been working together on this, and there is a proposal for a shorter text, especially to remove all this part that was from previous versions of the recommendation. Then in section 10, we want to deal with the statistical analysis. Mainly, the idea is to point to other existing ITU recommendations that can help on this. And here, for example, we have Lucian comments on that it could be helpful to know which type of data we are analyzing, right? I don't know if you want to add something, Lucian.
Well, I think that to some extent it's the same comment I already gave previously. So since unfortunately I wasn't so much involved in the whole process because of my movement to here to Boulder, and I missed also the last physical meeting. I never seen the data coming, and I'm not sure how much we should within this recommendation focus on classical ACR scale analysis, or how much we are moving towards also doing some other data analysis, especially time taken to do the task or stuff like that. So in this sense, it was difficult for me to propose something solid.
Yeah, maybe we can address this. I mean, for sure, taking into a look into the slides of the different labs, but maybe when we define previous sections on the different measures that we are capturing, then maybe it will help you to, I mean, you and the others to point to, if you want to analyze like in a simple way, some ACR questions that you are using, just point to this recommendation, or if you want to analyze audio, then going to another. So the main idea will be to identify useful recommendations, more than provide real statistical analysis to be applied to that. And then we have section 11. Anna and Sarah, you want to structure of the third session?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can comment on it, and of course interrupt me if needed. We try to define a possible protocol, starting from pre-screening to the post-questionnaires, including basically the reasons why the different steps are needed, trying not to overlap with the previous sections. We noticed Lucian's comment about the timing. Actually, the overall duration, we put it based on the presentations from the CWI meeting, so that none of the presentations appear to be more than 90 minutes. And we also refer to P919 for the timing, in which the same timings were reported. But of course, we don't have strong opinions on that. If you believe that different timings should be identified, or if we don't want to provide specific recommendations about the timing, we can modify that.
Well, my question was more like, but it seems that you don't have very strong numbers that it cannot be longer. Yeah? So then I probably wouldn't say that it's maximum, because it is recommendations, so then people should really follow it. And it seems that we don't have a proof that it cannot be longer. Yeah. but of course you can put that, that like you kind of recommend because you found that users are kind of tired or something like that.
Okay. So we can like make it more, let's say, less stringent as indication.
Yeah, maybe especially that is coming from having a total session of 90 minutes. No, that is a lot. Probably if you want to spend more time, that probably is not recommendable. But if you want to spend more time, you can.
We also try to consider the case in which there are different types of conditions. Yeah, as you see there. So, I mean, we try to somehow hypothesize how much each condition would last, so that we try to find a trade-off between the overall duration of the task and the task of the active, sorry, the duration of the active test. But for sure, we can review that according to your suggestions.
You know, we can relax it a bit and
okay.
That's any other comment? Okay, so then we have section 12, information to report on a subjective tests. Also, the idea here is to point to other existing standards and yeah, mainly as described in the IEEE 110 and others they are not considered that one.
So sorry. In the test protocol in the previous section, just at the end, stay there. Basically, we should provide. I would provide a stronger recommendation about pilot tests. It's not only that they can be performed; it is basically that I wouldn't say must, but at least should, because a lot of problems. You get a lot of problems in the test. I mean, you can remove a lot of problems in the test if you do a pilot before doing the actual test. So I would say that it should be a bit stronger, this recommendation, because it's not that important in simpler ones like in P910. Probably you can do a lot of things without much thinking about what you are doing. But if you design an interactive experiment, it is really, really important that you take a bit of time on doing a pilot before doing the actual test.
Okay.
Okay. Lucian, you have any other comments?
Yes. So I just realized that actually with this time, I have a question to, let's say, community. Do you have an experience, and maybe it would be worth of kind of noticing how much the experience of a certain tester with the technology influence the time they spend and they feel okay. Because I know it can be super extreme. I had this one case where a colleague of mine, she put a headset and just in a second, she said, sorry, I have to take it off. So we can have this extreme tester that will come to the test and won't be able to spend in the headset even without any difficult things there to do even a second. But of course, on the other hand, I've got the student that is working on VR for a longer time and he plays a lot. And then those people can probably spend like 3 hours, almost no influence whatsoever. But then average user, they probably start to be tired just because something is on your head, yeah, and it's heavy and it's I don't know, pressing your head. So actually, there is probably an influence, and probably we cannot make those experiments as long as for video, for example, watching on TV, not only because it's boring, but also because it starts to be really physically fatigued. So maybe within the IMG, because we did so many tests, so maybe we can have a recommendation that I wouldn't fix this recommendation because this would still be something that people probably should kind of try to follow with their own experiment. But this is interesting and important factor, let's say, that should be considered. And with so many tests, maybe we already have some data about it.
Okay, Femi, please. Femi? Maybe are you muted?
Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, now it's
Okay. Yes, sorry. For some funny reason, this app is. So I just wanted to follow up on Lucian's point, because in the selection, it's one of the things I was considering in terms of experience of the user when selecting. And even with our tests, you found people where, you know, like they could just go on and on and on and on, and you have a few people who couldn't do more than 15 or 20 minutes on it.
yeah. So you mean that it's probably something that we can ask at the beginning or relate
Yes.
somehow with the experience that they have using HQs,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And the other thing is, since we're putting it in the recommendation, I'm thinking if this is not like an issue with pre-selection rather than during the test or pilot test.
You mean the time?
No, the issue raised. So if someone can't wear a headset for long periods of time, so like the example Lucian gave where the person just wore the headset and literally within a minute they had to take it off, will that not be a pre-selection issue? And then we kind of, for lack of a better word, eliminate that person from the test itself.
Yeah, probably it can be selection or even like removal, no? If you know that she's not going to be able to do this.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add from my side, I can imagine that we could describe also in the recommendation that if you are willing to test a system that requires more time, then probably you should select people that use this technology daily basis. So let's say, of course, this is kind of population bias that we do because we select people that already like and use the virtual reality. On the other hand, if we would like to test, I don't know, a system for a telemeeting like that, definitely anyone who wouldn't be able to wear a headset for more than an hour wouldn't just participate in the meeting, like simply not at all. So we could kind of assume that in the future, the technology will be better or people will just used to it. But to do the test now for this future use case, we need users that really you are able to use the technology already now. So this pre-selection of the ones that are used to the technology could be useful in some cases, but then if we are willing to put something like that to the recommendation, then definitely we have to say that like you have to very clearly mark it in the description of the experiment. I selected people that use a lot of VR. I was looking for those subjects because this will definitely have an influence on the results, no doubt.
Sarah, please.
Yes, just one quick thing on this. The fact is that, I mean, according to what we did also in previous tests, this also is very dependent on the specific application and the type of movement you have inside it, so that maybe you could, let's say, discard a participant because he or she has poor experience, but indeed your specific experience is not actually causing many cyber sickness issues. So that I don't know how to, I mean, how to balance that in the sense that maybe it's a risk of excluding people for no reason.
So I fully agree that this is very dangerous. So just imagine the experienced players in first person shooter in VR, they play with the movement with joystick, which for an average person, if you just give for the first or second time a VR headset and say, move with the joystick, this will be like 2 minutes game probably, yeah, and then they are done.
Yeah.
So of course, making this experiment with those experienced players will give very, very different results because of how much they are used to certain things. So that is why, in my opinion, we could kind of run such an well, we could describe in the recommendation that if you want to make a longer experiment, then you probably need those testers, but really be aware that your results are very biased. Like you won't see some effects that exist for the population, but because of your selection, you are completely blind to that. And this is very dangerous, of course, in sense of quality. Well, assuming that people are very tired after half an hour of the having headset on the head, there's no point to test the technology. The technology will not be used if we assume that most of the people, that the technology won't fit to it in the future. Yeah. So still, I think that there is a value in longer tests, even if they are done in the specific for the specific population.
Pablo, please.
So a couple of things. One is it is difficult to foresee what's going to happen in a specific test because each test is totally different. Its technology is totally different, and somehow we limit we need to provide some guidelines, especially to people who are a bit new in kind of designing the tests, right? So I mean, there's going to be people who know how to break this recommendation because they know what they're doing, and that's totally okay. We need to provide generic guidelines to people who kind of arrive fresh to the area and require specific guidelines on what to do, right? Because there will always be specific situations where you want to go beyond, and that's totally okay. I mean, this is research and expertise, so we need to think about the average tester, and for this, giving kind of generic recommendations which are reasonable to follow, I think it's okay. Otherwise, people are going to be so lost that they will not be able to use the recommendation. So it is better that we are a bit conservative in the kind of tests that we think about than to describe a lot of, a very complex scenario than people. I mean, like new experimenters are not able to follow because they need the experience that they lack, and experienced researchers will still not use it because they will have different problems that we don't foresee. So I wouldn't be very. I think that what you propose, Sarah and Anna, on the average duration and things like that, is probably something that is okay. And we should add a note that we might. I mean, like if you want to extend this, you will probably need more experienced people or something like that. But don't play too much with the ramifications of the branching of what we're doing, because it might be probably over design of the recommendation.
Okay, thanks.
What I would probably do is, as part of the training session, so not the pilot, but basically, if you are doing training at the beginning, it might be a good moment to detect people who's not able to do the test and then add it as an additional screening method. Because if somebody's not even able to wear the HMD, maybe we should kind of use also the training a bit to not only to expose the highest and the lowest quality and things like that, but maybe to explicitly say that we should also expose people to the most uncomfortable of challenging a scenario that's going to happen in the test, to see if they're able to actually do the test or not. That could be an interesting taking point. And beyond that, I would add maybe some general guidelines on okay, maybe we want to do something with experts. If we want to go beyond that would be possibly, that if you want to extend, then you using people who's trained to do that. And maybe we can take it back also to the selection of participants and make sure that it happens. So we can make a note on that, and maybe we can add a bit about this. But yeah, it has so many different considerations, as Lucian mentioned, that I will not put too much in the description about that because it might be misused by the researchers, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, fully agree.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this concludes the formal body of the recommendation, and then we have some annexes that contain the detailed descriptions of the tasks that we have tested. So we have, I think Marta worked on proposing a structure of the description of the task, so it is kind of common for all of them, right? We have for the survival task, so we will have task description, target of the task, subtasks, task duration, and then participants, the roles of the participants, if there are confederates, for example. And we will provide some example of instructions to the participants and examples of application. And suggested questionnaires, we should add, as Lucian commented, right, the amount of data per participant for the analysis. So I think what we have here is Miguel's added the task that is based on the survival task, a small modification that we added that we used at UPM. I don't know, Felix or Camille, if you have worked with him on this, or is this only the description of our approach?
This is just the description that we have, at least from my side.
Yeah, I mean, in HH, we use the same. That is true, yeah. I think in TU Ilmenau, they used like the classical one, no?
Yes, in the test, we used yeah, a version that is based on the P1301 recommendation, just brought into VR, basically.
Maybe we can add also the differences here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have not done, so I will do this.
So this is for the survival one. Then we have for the block building. Anna, you want to comment?
Yes, we've started a draft for the block building with Carlos and Lisa. We are trying to be as concise as possible as suggested in the previous meeting. We still have to review this. Still, Lisa has to add maybe some content more on her specific task if something does not apply for her. And yeah, we had this brief discussion on subtasks because we were trying to think whether the three you see there were subtasks, but then Carlos thought that maybe this does not really apply to the block building, and I think that it is right. And yeah, basically we will have some figures, so some example figures of the 3D structures to suggest and review the whole draft. I don't know if Carlos wants to add something.
Yes, about the discussion of the subtask, we realized that there is no measurable subtask under the whole task that is building the whole figure. So we are like more in the sense of discarding the subtask part. For the roles, we have added the suggestion of the CWI and UPM study that sorry, for the Confederate participant, that if you want to use a Confederate participant, it's better to use it for the role of instructor. as the builder is the more sensitive part of the conversation, and if you want to see or measure the influence of some technical aspect on the quality of experience, it's better to put it on the builder side. For the variation and combination, we have write down the different tests that in Roma, I think in Roma UCL and UPM CWI. The first one is the mine and CWI that is using 3 degrees of freedom. That was this version of volumetric conference in front of a table. That's why 3 degrees of freedom. From the side of Roma and UCL, they were more based on virtual reality, pure virtual reality, but on the other hand, they are able to perform the task using 6 degrees of freedom. That was the combination regarding the different possibility of movement. And for the example of instructions to participant, that was from Anna and Lisa.
Yes, I basically based on the other ideas.
Cool. Okay, the third one is body communication. Ashu, Mirene, Femi, or Enrique, are you there? I think Enrique was working on it, but I don't know if he's here.
We have nothing to add to that or about that at the moment, but I know we're looking at streamlining a few things, especially for the charade.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Enrique was working on it because he was working on the other document, and I think he left some comments for you guys. So, I mean, so this is still ongoing.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the treasure hunt. That I think it's also quite complete already. Marta, Sarah, Shirin, or Rishi, you want to comment?
Well, we have worked on that, and we still need to review some of the parts, but more or less we are taking care of it, and we will continue working on that.
Okay. Okay, and yeah, maybe we will include an appendix describing the different systems that can be covered by this recommendation. And I think that's all. No, not so. Example of test results. Here we are going to put some results for tests that can serve for the people that want to design them. Okay, more comments or suggestions or questions? Pablo?
Yeah, well, a small comment is that actually the tasks are part of the recommendation. So they are not just descriptive; they're kind of mandatory or just recommended. So they're not in some of the previous recommendations. Some of the tasks were in an appendix or in an annex. I forget all the. I sometimes forget the terminology, but basically some of the previous recommendation put some tasks as examples of something which is not integral part of the recommendation. Now, in principle, what we are proposing is that the tasks that we propose are really part of the recommendation, because basically they are the core of what we are building. Of course, we need to get the feedback from ITU and see if this is acceptable or not, or if they have any concern on that. That's a small thing. And a big thing is a big thank you to everyone who's been contributing to this effort, because it's really, really very nice and strong teamwork And the fact that we have feedback from so many different labs, I think that even if we still have lots of questions and not as many answers as we would like to, but at least we have a very solid, very solid background and a very solid idea that what we are proposing up to some point makes sense because we have used it and we have really tested what we are proposing. So this is something very valuable, and it's being a lot of work from a lot of people. Most of you are here. Some of you, maybe some people attending the meeting is not taking part on that, but it's a really appreciate the strong effort that's been put by this whole team into making this joint work together and contributing to the recommendation. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Yep, totally. Thank you all. So nothing more to add. I think we will follow up on emails and small audio calls. Probably we will, with Pablo, we will try to set up maybe another deadline in December to do another checkpoint in any meeting and then finalize the contribution to ITU. So please check your emails in the following days. And that's all. Thanks all. Thank you everybody for this work and also for the feedbacks that you have provided. And that's all from our side, Shell and Margaret.
Okay, thank you. Shell had to leave, so it's me, and I'd like to quickly handle any moving of presentations that needs to be done, any shifting of the schedule. Yanis, are you still here?
Yes, I am, Margaret.
Okay, so as per your email, it looked like it might be best to shift your presentation slightly. What is your thoughts on that? And let me share the list of presentations. I'm thinking on SAM, if we put 220 at the end of SAM, that would be more comfortably after your other time commitment. How does that sound?
I'm fine as long as the group doesn't mind, and I think having the discussion at the end makes more sense. What do you say, Lucian?
Well, if we want to have a discussion about the future of SAM, we cannot pack too much to this session. And we probably should end with the discussion itself. So this is the last presentation. Oh no, it's not the last presentation.
Well, I'm proposing we shift it to be the last.
To be the last.
Yes, it should be the last for sure.
Okay, so no problems there. The other one, Yanis, it looks like this time slot doesn't work well for you. Is that correct?
That would be roughly 9 a.m. Pacific, or do you have an estimate?
Well, let's see. Yes, roughly 9 a.m. It just looked a bit close to me. We could move it tomorrow to be this 1 hour free spot right before the break.
That probably is best if, again, the group doesn't mind. And I would have, what time would that be Pacific?
That would be roughly 6:20 is my best estimate.
Unfortunately, that collides with my other conflict, Margaret.
So CGI 220, what if we see about swapping these two? Would that help?
Where would you land then?
That would be closer to 9 a.m. on Wednesday. And we could have a break there if necessary.
Would that be for Norm?
For Norm, if we swapped CGI and Norm.
Sorry, is 9 a.m. again Pacific or your time?
Pacific.
But I thought 2:06 as it is right now is 9 a.m. Pacific, right? Did I misunderstand this?
Well, okay, fair enough. It would be closer to 9:30.
Yeah, no, again, my apologies, but 9 to 10, I have this very hard conflict with the class.
I see. So this whole time slot isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at how long 5G 507 and sorry 205 and 207. We're predicting 1 hour and then half an hour. So what about after AVHD tomorrow, session 2? So that would be around 9:15, 9:30.
That's gonna work great for me, but again, I feel terrible if I impose myself to the rest of the group. So unless there are no real objections, I will take it.
Okay, let's make that change then. Let me. Okay, so our color coding is off. We are likely to end early on Wednesday, but I'll fix that when we're done. Okay, is there anybody else needs something shifted?
Thank you so much, by the way, for the flexibility. Just unfortunate that I could not really move those on my other schedule.
My pleasure. Okay, if
like
there...
many people, I think in this call that we're doing like a double shift between the VQEG meetings and our quote-unquote regular schedule. But...
Well, yes. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone who sent me presentations. There's going to be a slight delay while I get those uploaded, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.